Hey guys, it's Tactical Tuesday here on She Knows Arsenal. My name is Jessica. What? What did I just say? I didn't have my normal thing. I will get better at these intros. You're watching She Knows Arsenal Tactical Tuesday. My name is Jessica and I'm your host. You can follow me on Twitter at @itchjessino. There's about 30 of you guys watching already. Make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. So the difference between this Tactical Tuesday and other ones is that we're actually giving an opportunity for other subscribers or just people just coming through, an opportunity to see what these shows are all about. Just in case you're thinking about becoming a member, you can try before you buy. And yeah, and we'll see how it goes. So this is what we do every single Tuesday. If we play in a way that allows us to break it down, we will take some slides, some visuals of the game, and kind of talk our way through the game and the key tactical moments and really break them down. It's different than post-match and instant reaction, because in those we kind of just go over the surface, just kind of talk about how we felt about the game, the emotions of it, goals and all that kind of stuff. In this show, we do the tactical part of it. We talk about our build-up, our press, how we get into goal-scoring opportunities, missteps, all of those things, So yeah, that's what these are all about. So if you like tactics, you'll like these shows. Let's see who's in the chat so far. We have G. Kasi here. Thank you so much for joining. Lord Gunnar says CL football was on tonight. Must be nice. I mean, must be nice, but I have to be honest, those games were dead. Mike W. says, good evening, folks. Good evening to you as well. And let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to bring in my panel for today. I have Souls here and George. Hey, guys. How are you?
I'm good.
All good.
Amazing. Souls, are you sure you're okay? Just want to check on you.
No, not really.
I'm going to check on you. What is going on with your Barcelona, my friend? It's not the Barcelona I used to know. Who is this girl? I never met her.
You know what? It is literally Arsenal 2.0. Coleman is an arrogant piece of crap. Right? He goes to the Barca fans, you've got me to thank for saving your club. And then he goes and does that. The following game, nah, man, this man is... I don't even want to get into it.
Oh, my goodness. I mean... Yeah, it was pretty shameful. I have to.
It was bound to be a rout, though, too. Like, I mean, you looked at the lineups, and I was just like, "Oh God, Bars!" Like, I looked at it, and I'm like, "Okay, transition team."
Have some self-respect. Come on.
I know, mate. I know, but you know what? Look, they had some really cool interiors, and I was like, "Look, maybe they can hold on." But then in the back of my mind, I'm like, "Oh God, this has like shades of the Allianz Arena that we were so used to."
Yeah, Eric Garcia turning his back on a shot. Come on, bruv. Come on. Please, just have some dignity.
It's crazy. I mean, even if you watch Bayern, I mean, I was thinking
they were shocking.
The Bayern.
They were in second gear though, which is crazy.
That is true.
They didn't start with Nabry either. Like, it was mad.
Yeah, it's crazy, and to think that we can't even touch this competition just is like, oh. But it's also because of the level of competition in our league that makes it difficult. I'm pretty sure if we were in any other league, we could try to qualify, we'd be close, But it was interesting watching that. Obviously, I got tons of laughs from the Manchester United game. I'm shameless. Like, I laughed very hard.
That was funny.
That was their first string as well, Jess. Like, there's no context that you can sit there COVID ravaged. They're missing their spine. None of this crap.
Like, rotated because it's a weaker
or
opposition.
It was literally their starting lineup, and they hooked Jadon Sancho after 35 minutes. Drink it in, my good God.
Not even
No.
Like,
but they had to because of a red card.
I don't know if they had to take off Sancho.
But let's be real. All the times that we've gotten red card, it's not that big of a deal. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, true.
And
true.
Champions League Varane on the first goal.
He did a holding. He just backed off. Oh my God.
What were the substitutions? Martial for Fred. Are you laughing? Ronaldo for Jesse Lingard, who gives them the goal in the 95th minute. You could not write the script. Drink it in. Those who told you that Jadon would suffer on the right wing, I'm happy. Call it in.
Oh my goodness. So, I mean, 5 games in, and the Sancho agenda is really alive and well. He hasn't looked great. And I want to be consistent and say I do think players need some adaptation, but I don't remember them giving Thomas Partey any time to adapt. Like, it was just very much he should be amazing.
And I love Jadon. You know what? If he was going to play on the right wing, we did call this. right? Like he would not play this way on the right wing. And so I think you bought world-class Jadon Sancho, but you have to play him on the left. Don't play him on the right.
He's one of those players, right, who doesn't initially suit the Premier League. He needs to adapt his game to suit the Premier League. He's too flary. But he doesn't, because the thing is, he needs to know he doesn't have the space he has in the Bundesliga. Once he realizes that, that's when he'll kick in.
I think he's got the separation, though, Souls. You know what it is for me? Like, he's got no overlapping right back. So, okay, the one world-class season he had on the right was with Hakimi at Dortmund. Every other time that he's been on the right, he's been poor. And so when you stick him with Aaron Wan-Bissaka, it's just not a tactical fit. Why he's not putting him on the left, I don't understand it.
Man's clumsy, innit? Aaron Wan-Bissaka, he's so clumsy.
Aaron Wan-Bissaka. Oh, the best defensive fullback in the league. Oh, inject it. So funny.
I love it.
Those Champions League refs don't give a shit. And they change even though they're like Premier League refs, they ref differently.
Oh, yeah.
In the Champions League, which is exactly what they did in the Euros. I don't know why they can't referee the exact same, but you know, it was just funny.
I just want the same energy, Jess. I just want the same energy. You know, one player in, they had their starting 11. What the hell happened? You know, Maguire's in there, Varane's in there, Pogba, Fernandes, Ronaldo, who was gonna, do it. I don't know, man. It was just it, and you know what? I'm gonna come for them.
It's a beautiful ball. It's a beautiful ball by Bruno.
So you know what? I'm coming. I'm coming for them because you know what? I'm sitting here and I sat here patiently saying balance was going to be key. How is Ole going to respond to this? Ronaldo's going to throw the balance. And well, you know what? You saw it. So 5-0-5 buildup is lovely. I love to see that. Let's see more of it. But yeah, let's see how they do it in the league. But my good God,
for Van der Beek, I think he was the true loser today because I don't think he was actually playing that poorly. He wasn't playing bad at all, and like. He got taken out, and I just was thinking to myself, like...
Yeah, they should have taken Pogba off, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm like...
Yeah.
Donny van der Beek, yeah, he's probably regretting that
He should have come to Arsenal when he had the opportunity, but...
Even like Ziyech, I think about him as well sometimes. I'm like, you should have waited, bro. Like, but they were just desperate to go. Gotta go Chelsea, gotta go Man United. Now see. Okay.
I'm just glad.
Inject it. All right, so let's go ahead and talk some tactics. Now that we've gotten that out of our systems, that was fun. Before somebody comes out and be like, "You can't even make the Champions League." We don't care. Okay, so here we go. So basically, we'll go through the game and kind of talk about the different slides and all that kind of stuff. Some of them are out of order, so like allow it, give me a chance, But what I wanted to talk about first, really, was the press. When I rewatched the game, I thought. Not the entire game because obviously we absorbed pressure and kind of took our foot off the gas at certain points. I don't think there was ever really a moment where they really played through the press to a point where it was like, oh my gosh, like we actually contained them quite well. And one thing that I noticed was just Odegaard's energy. I do think that he lacks a little bit of pace and all of that, but his intelligence in terms of cutting off angles and stuff was really good. And I don't think I've ever really seen our midfielders up this high. Ainsley Maitland-Niles is right there next to Odegaard in line with Pepe, and Lokonga is behind him. George, for you, like seeing our high press or the press that we had against Norwich, is that something you want to see more often? And is there anything that we could have done to improve it?
Well, so look, I've seen this before. We went back to basics, though. So, we talked at Man City how we kind of went in our pressing structure, a 3-4-1-2, and I really don't know why we did that. I mean, I kind of do in terms of who we had at the back, but we really went back to our 4-4-2 press. Like, this is what we do off the ball. Everyone that asks me what's the plan, I always say we build in a 3-2-5 that goes to a 2-3-5, and then we go into this 4-4-2 block. And this is what we've seen. In fact, Ainsley is typically Thomas Partey, like when he is in there. We do see this kind of pressure, but what I don't see is kind of how long we were able to sustain it. And I think that was because of Odegaard and Ainsley. In fact, if you look at some of the pressing stats, Odegaard's definitely top, but Ainsley's close behind him. So a lot of times, like when I did the rewatch here, I was looking, Ainsley was really poor on the ball, but off the ball, he was really important to making sure that we were cutting off that out ball kind of in the center. He was constantly in the midfield, making sure that they were just passing through the back. And I think this press really lasted, I'd say, roughly 30 minutes. In terms, like, we kind of broke that down in the post-match. But for me, this counter press lasted from 0 to 30. I think it filtered because of the inexperience of our pivot. I'm sure we'll get into their positionings, but in terms of just looking overall at the structure, I think 4-4-2 has been our press for a while. In fact, it was Arteta's go-to when he first came in, and we did press in a 4-4-2. I think Odegaard is typically replaced by ESR in terms of previous, if you want to try to look at common things that we did previously. But I think we did a really good job about suffocating the space. Typically, their goalkeeper would go long, or, one of their center backs would go long from this. We forced a lot of errors. And I think what you don't see here is Ben White squeezing the space along with Gabriel and Tomiyasu, who's kind of in the back there. So the front players were able to really press up. But, when you do kind of release that press, you've got somebody behind to really squeeze that space and make it successful. So, yeah, I think structure-wise, I saw us return to pressing tactics, though. Just in conclusion, there definitely was a return to old ways that we didn't do in the previous game. So I don't think it was just personnel, but we definitely returned to a more traditional 4-4-2, which suits us, by the way.
Yeah, I think a lot of fans want to see us, use the press more, especially because we're not really chance creation. Like, I don't think we create a lot of chances just from our build-up. We're not quite there yet. So another way to create chances is to press. And a lot of teams in the Premier League press. It's not anything new. I just don't think we've ever had the athletes to really do it, or the football intelligence to know how to, and not even just that though, the responsibility, having players that are going to take responsibility and make sure that they do it. And you even saw Odegaard telling people where to go. You saw Thomas Partey moving people. Everybody was kind of telling everybody where to go. And I hope that we keep that up. I know that people want to see a Liverpool style press. I don't think we're quite there, but getting 30 minutes of this and then in spurts, like in the 60th minute, 70th minute, seeing that as well, that was good for me. I know we're not going to press, the entire game.
Yeah, like really quickly, like the one little tweak I'll just add to the counter press. So it's not just the 4-4-2 press, but what makes us very different from Liverpool, who go a little bit more man-to-man, is the fact that we like to block space. We did this against Chelsea at Stamford Bridge, and, our pressing structure is a little bit less man-to-man, but a little bit more blocking space. And so the reason that we do that, by the way, is because we don't have the athletes to compete man-to-man. And so, even if with Thomas Partey, I don't think that we have a midfield pivot with Kof Basuma, let's all sigh, to like help him out to really do that man-to-man press. So what you're going to see from us, I think, in the season, just personally, is we're going to continue with this 4-4-2. But if we don't, we're always going to block space. I don't think we ever really go true man-to-man, even though at times we did in this game. We definitely did have man-to-man press, but the front players block space. They didn't actually commit necessarily. So I think we're going to see very similar styles of pressing in that sense. So don't expect quite a Liverpool, but expect kind of a combination between a City and Liverpool where the center goes man-to-man, but maybe the attackers will block space and guide to a certain area.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely something that we needed to utilize, and I'm just glad to see it back, because when Arteta first came, we pressed, we pressed when he first came in. So that's something that he wants to do. So let's look at some of the next little.
Can I just quickly mention one thing?
Yes.
Yeah. So just obviously having a look at after the game, I just wanted to see kind of what the pressing stats came to. But one of the things that stood out was Odegaard. He had 20. He led the press 22 times, 15, I believe, led to ball. 18 that led to ball recoveries. That then led us to an attack. I think Ainsley Maitland-Niles was about 2 or 3 just off him.
Yeah, he was second.
And this is the thing, right? So when you look at it, from the 2 players being introduced in, we've got nearly 40 opportunities where we've led the press with about a 70% success rate in ball recovery. So when you look at that with a combination, it's not only just the fact that we've now started pressing and that we press for 30 minutes, it's effective pressing. And that's what allows that's what allows us to open up so many more opportunities. That led to 30 shots being taken. That led to the fact that so many more opportunities were open and that we could squeeze them a lot further up, because not only were we pressing them, but any space left behind didn't really matter, because we'd won the ball high up. So even if our back line was at the halfway line and playing that high line, it didn't really matter, because we'd got the ball where we needed to win it, so that we didn't become a threat.
Yeah, for sure. So this is another moment where Ramsdale gets the ball, and this is from, somebody passed it to him. This is not the.
I think it was Ben White.
Yeah, this one was Ben White because there's another one that Gabriel passes it to him, and we kind of roll it around, and Ainsley ends up with the ball, and Lukonga's standing here. They kind of pass back and forth a little bit slow, and then eventually they get the ball free to Odegaard. I thought this was a good passage of play, and then we got to this moment here, and I was asking Souls before, and maybe you could give me some insight on this as well, George. And if I were to back it up a little bit, the angle is not as tight. But I think there was a moment to maybe pass it into Aubameyang. Do you think that we should be looking to pass in between the lines and get that early ball into Aubameyang instead of always passing it out wide to Pepe, where he's a little bit he's a little bit repetitive. He's a little bit repetitive and isolated. And for me, like if you do back it up just a little bit, it's not that angle is not as bad. Like I do think maybe there's an opportunity to do that. Should we be looking to play Aubameyang in there instead of Pepe? You know, because we did opt to do Pepe a lot. I mean, he took some of the most touches in that first half.
So this is part of my frustration. We'll get on to Pepe a little bit more because I think we've got a video just to kind of really show the difference between Pepe. But he slows our attack a lot. This is the issue that I've got. And now, is this instruction or is this player focused, right? When you receive with Odegaard, unfortunately, he is so left-footed dominant there. I don't think I'd ever suspect him with how he's receiving to pass it between the lines. But Aubameyang makes those runs just every game. Like all the time. When I talk about movement, why I'm not worried about Aubameyang, he's always on the last shoulder of a defender, and that passes on for you if you let him run. He will go and make those runs. I think, unfortunately, though, it's just Odegaard, when he does have the ball in that position, you know, he normally is really good at releasing the striker. He can do it. He's shown it at Sociedad. But I think for him, the way that the ball was carrying on momentum, we don't have enough players there that he felt comfortable Aubameyang competing. So I think for him, the safe pass is to Pepe, but that's part of the problem. We played a safe pass too often. And so when you introduce players like Thomas Partey, Emile Smith-Rowe, who would take that ball and maybe drive a little bit more, you get risk takers. And I think that's maybe the difference between the 62nd minute and what we saw in the first 30, where the press really gave us chance creation. But I think in the 62nd minute, you saw players committing other players and releasing our outlets a little bit more quickly with, a little bit more pace. I think here you do give it to Pepe and he's isolated and he's got to beat 2 or 3 players. And I don't think he's got any support too, I might add. Like, I don't think this helps Pepe. So you play this out and Pepe receives it wide in the channel, but right now it's basically 3 versus 5 in terms of the Norwich attack when you look at it. So already he doesn't have any superiority, doesn't have any support. So personally, I would encourage my players to play it in between the lines. That's a great corridor that Aubameyang can run into with the center backs there. I wouldn't be coaching him to go wide. And I don't know if that's necessarily an instruction, because I've seen Bukayo attack that space and pass it in. So I don't think it's necessarily an instruction to do so. But it's just a tendency, I think.
Sorry, you guys, I just got a phone call. But basically, for me, when I look at this and I'm like, if you drive into that space, into zone 14 right in front of the box, you force the defenders to make a decision. You even have the left-sided center back, I think, over here. I think that's who that is. I'm not sure. Mm-hmm. That's in between whether he wants to stay with Pepe or go central. And if you do that, then maybe you could slip Pepe in if you attack that space. Maybe you can slip Aubameyang. And I think we work around zone 14 but never really penetrate, and we don't make defenders have to make really hard decisions. That's another reason why I don't think we get as many penalties as other teams and stuff like that. We're just not driving into that space. Souls, do you see this in like a different way? Are you okay with the easier pass every once in a while, or do you think that we go to it a little bit too much? I know a lot of Arsenal fans would look at that and be like, Odegaard gave the ball away, but for me, I prefer to see us trying to get it to Aubameyang than get it to Pepe, because basically what Pepe does here is he gets it, he cuts it in on his left eventually, and then tries to cross it in. For me, that doesn't really help us out.
But then you just take a Pepe out of the game. That's the problem. It's one of those. It's just, if that was Bukayo Saka, I don't think anyone would have a problem it being passed to Bukayo Saka, because the chances are that it would amount to something, and that's the issue. Like there, I played midfield. When I used to play, I would never make that pass to Aubameyang, just because I know it's 70 to 80% chances are Tim Krul collects that ball, and 20% chances are Aubameyang gets that ball. So I wouldn't do it personally. And it's not necessarily, this is the problem. When we think this is a safe option, I don't see it that way. I just think, look, you have to retain possession. It's 11 to 12 minutes into the game. You don't need to play a risky ball just yet, to the point where, because that for me is a very, it's the chances that's getting to Aubameyang, you've got to play the pin perfect ball, with the perfect weight, with the perfect power for the keeper to not to collect that. For me, what I would probably do alternatively to this, stop the ball, as in just stop the run, play it to Lokonga, and Lokonga plays it into Aubameyang. Yes, it's a longer route there, but it's the better way to get that ball into the box, allowing Pepe to cut in. Odegaard, when that ball goes to Lokonga, can drive into the box, become the second man, like a shadow striker, which is what Bruno does a lot, where he makes the ball into a pivot, and then that pivot makes the ball coming in. And that's what you can do. But I just don't think that ball to Aubameyang is on, in my personal opinion. Not just, firstly, he's left-footed, and his right foot's not good enough to make that pass. Even if he's remotely comfortable, he's not making that. Even with the left, let's say his right foot is the stronger foot, I still think there's a higher risk that you lose the ball than anything amounting. So either way, I don't think it amounts to a lot. But playing that ball to Pepe means if Pepe has a better quality, or if he has better decision making, it could amount to more than Odegaard's pass to Aubameyang. That's just the way I see it. And I
think if Kevin De Bruyne is in that spot, though, he plays that ball. Like when you look at,
he plays it with the outside of his right foot. Like he
plays
it with the outside of his right boot.
But yeah. I look at that channel, and that's too big of a space. Like if I were to switch it to Lokonga, I think it's 3v1 essentially. And right now, in my opinion, it's 1v2 with these two, and that channel's open. For me, I think this is part of the risk. Maybe many have critiques about our attacking play. And I do think that Pepe slows down the game when he receives in these situations.
But if that isn't Pepe, forget the fact it's Pepe for a second. If that isn't Pepe, what would you want?
I would still want it to go to Oba personally, mate, because even if it's Saka and he does get that, yes, he's more likely to dig something out, but he's isolated. Regardless, if Saka receives that, he's still 1v3. Like that center back, that left back's going to meet him, that midfield's going to meet him.
But the chances are that ball's going to Tim Krul anyway. So regardless, I think it's a missed opportunity.
When Pepe receives the ball there, because you can see his back foot,
yeah,
he's too far outside of the box to be any use to us. In this game, what he did was beat his man and then let his man come back and then try to cross. He's a little bit too hesitant for me. So I'm looking at it. I'm like, if Odegaard just could kind of take that space and maybe do a slip ball into Aubameyang, that'd be great. But also, if Pepe was the type of player to take his man on and then just cross it as soon as possible and be more direct, then we wouldn't have as much of a problem with it. I think there's two options there. We took the safe one. But Pepe
I don't hate
wasn't
it.
helping himself.
Yeah, like I don't. No, and I don't hate the option. And part of the issue, though, is like I don't know if we've really highlighted here, but Thomas Partey, if he's playing, he's 10 or 15 yards behind Odegaard, and he's got an option there. Tomiyasu also is well back. Like he is isolated. He's on an island, and we do this to our right wing. The issue that I've got is that when Pepe receives, he's far more likely to slow down this block. And what we're going to get is like one person in the box with Oba against 5 people. But with Saka, like you're right, Souls, like I think he can go in and out a lot more easily. And the issue is Pepe can only go out to in. That's essentially the run that he really can only do. And he holds on to the ball too much. And so even if Odegaard's going to come and do an overlap, I know that Pepe is going to go inside. He'll never go outside. And so for me, as a defender, I know where I need to block him, and it becomes a lot easy. But at the same token, I actually think he was pretty aggressive in this first 10 or 15 minutes. Like if you watch the reback, I think he was a lot more direct in the opening exchanges, and he wasn't as Pepe as he did kind of later on in the game. He actually was running quite well. So I'm not upset, Jess. I think this is a good example of taking a risky pass, and what really good teams do. They will play that risky pass. But, maybe in the first 10, 15 minutes, you want to retain possession. I'm not upset it goes to Pepe, but I do think it's an example of how we can vary our attack, and we just don't do it. And maybe that's a quality thing. I don't think this is a system thing. This is just maybe a quality issue. Like, I think Bruno plays that pass. Kevin De Bruyne plays that pass. I think some of these top midfielders will attempt that pass, even if it doesn't lead to something.
I'd still choose the Sambi option more than the Aubameyang option. That's the way I look at it. I mean, this is a difference of opinions on tactics and how we want the game to be played. But for me, the reason why I'd say Lokonga is because Lokonga's got one of two options. You can either play the ball into Taney, which would obviously kind of do what Pepe is going to do, but Taney's delivery is a little bit better. Or Sambi can play that ball a lot better because he's got the time. Because what will happen, right, is those defenders will either need to stop because they've now saying, okay, this attack has changed direction. They'd have to stop, right, which then allows us to speed up our attack and make the movement we need to do. But for me, I wouldn't go with the Aubameyang pass. I just think that's a high risk, low reward option for me.
I think that there's definitely different ways that we could go about it. Odegaard does pass this to Pepe. This wasn't one of the moments where he went to the byline. This is one of the moments where he slowed down and then tried to cross it into the box. By that time, Aubameyang was already covered, So for me, I'm thinking about it. I'm like, also there's an opportunity to get a penalty. It's just a lot of different things. But I think I prefer the pass. But, we could just, agree to disagree on that one. But let's talk about our build-up. And this is, to me, this is a very clear, representation of how we kind of, when we get into these positions of possession or midfielders, it depends on who's actually out there as well. Like Ainsley is out there to the left-hand side. This could easily be Thomas, Xhaka on that left-hand side, Thomas with the ball instead of Lokonga, and Tomiyasu here on the right. But Tomiyasu is actually in that 5 up top in this one, and then Pepe is actually off to the right. Saka is in the middle, Aubameyang and Tierney. So this is pretty much how we build up. The only thing that I will say is that I feel like once we get into this position, I don't see enough staggering and enough players coming to. What I do see is a lot of standing and waiting. Do you guys see that or not? Or am I the only one who kind of sees that when we get into these positions?
I think this is just a still frame, personally. Like, this is very much a two. I know it's still.
That you're like, well, that's why you don't see any movement, Jess.
No,
still.
Oh my God!
I don't mean it facetiously like that. what I mean is, this is very much like our 2-3-5, and we're recycling the ball. So I think we haven't quite got it to the wide space. Typically, what you're going to see is one of the inside players drop in to offer an option. You're going to see a little bit more staggered. I think here the issue is Odegaard's too close to the center pivot for me. I need to see a little bit more space. He's being marked off by the two players. In fact, the first player in that press is really marking the both of them. And so I just need to see a little bit more spacing involved personally. Like, I would like Odegaard in the hole where the ref is a lot more than I would where he is right now. And I think that opens the space for players to drop in a little bit more. I think here what you're looking at is just our classic structure, personally. And I think we're just switching the ball. We're still a little central, so we're not necessarily going to do much with it. But I do think that Lokonga right now, in this position, if we speed it up a little bit more, I think he delays playing the pass that's on. And he did that a little bit too much in these opening exchanges. And maybe not quite in this scenario, but I just found that when he's in that spot, I feel as though Thomas Partey would try to fire the ball between the lines to one of Oba or something like that. I mean, we saw a version of that in the goal where he's looking to beat the press. Here, I think we're just waiting for the players to come in and make an overload. It's a little bit of a tough still frame because we're not quite in one of the sides, and we typically overload on the wings, right? Like, we don't overload in the center. Maybe that's one thing to talk about tactically. But I think, Jess, if you look at all the teams in the league, or at least the best ones, they actually don't do that through the center. They do attack through the side. So I think we're just in the middle of recycling the ball here. But you do make a good point that traditionally, I don't think our forwards do enough movement in this position overall. So I do need to see a little bit more adventure from some of these guys in the front line.
I mean, in this position, your options are pretty much, because they were tippy-tapping, and Odegaard and Lokonga did this quite a bit of times. They weren't decisive enough for me. There was a lot of little tippy-tap that didn't really do anything, and that infuriates me. I'm like, we need to do something with the ball. I think Thomas takes that, and like you said, he makes a decision to fizz it into Aubameyang's feet, to fizz it into Saka. But the only option here, because of where the defenders are standing in the midfield and where Lokonga is and where our line of 5 is to pass it out wide, which is essentially what ended up happening, which is perfectly fine. But at some point, they need to make a decision, you know? Souls, do you have anything to add to this? Or
yeah, I think obviously what you guys are saying, this is an experience thing. I don't think it's a matter of quality necessarily. As you develop in your game, your decision making just becomes second nature in terms of how you're going to play. Odegaard and Lokonga look as good as they can be. They're still young and developing. That's why you're going to see a lot of this. But as time goes on, as they get more used to playing with each other, you'll see that, they'll start to make those decisions more second nature. In this situation as well, obviously, movement isn't really good. When you look at it, Odegaard's got 2 players around him. Even when you look at that defensive line, yes, you can break the press. But for me, it's just you need to see a little bit more proactive movement and a lot more quicker movement before that passes on. And that's what we don't see enough of sometimes. I think for me, Tomiyasu could be a little bit more. He needs to drop a bit further onto the byline just to give an option. And that's where I'd want Pepe to be personally. Just so that there is another option, someone who can then make, like, say, for example, Tomiyasu receives it and Pepe's in Tomiyasu's position, right? What will happen is we can back Pepe to turn and shoot because we've seen it multiple times. He's got a very good finesse shot on him, and that opens up more avenues. Whereas with Tomiyasu, I don't know how good his shot is. Everything else about his game, I'm quite confident with, but I just don't know how good of a shot he's got. So it can sometimes lead to having to or being forced to make a different decision just because of the situation you're in. But for me, look, again, it's early in the game. I think this is more of a tactical thing where Arteta's like, look, at the beginning, we'll just play it safe. It is Norwich. Those chances will open up. Because we do this a lot where even when you look at Man City, when we started off, yes, we took a few risky passes, but it was a lot of safer options first, if we can, before we make that risky pass. And this is where, obviously, when you then, we'll talk about it later on in the game, I guess, but right now, it looks like play it safe, recycle possession, just keep a hold of the ball, get a control of it, ease your nerves, and then we'll go, because it is after the international break, and that does play a factor in how you start games.
Well, actually, I think, just really quickly, guys, I think the issue with this is actually not in the still frame. It probably happens 30 seconds earlier. And what I think the issue is our pivot not releasing the ball quick enough. Norwich have gotten their settled block. So I think one of the big issues in that first 30 minutes that we saw was I don't think our pivot were progressive enough. And what that didn't give is kind of more 1v1 chances. So we talked about what Thomas is going to give you, and we'll talk about his goal a lot more. I actually think the issue is probably 30 seconds back, and you roll it back to catch Norwich out of their settled block, because right now what you're seeing is a really good defensive unit, and I'd anticipate that that's because we were moving the ball a little bit slowly and we didn't get the overload quick. And so right now you're competing against the settled block. That was, I think, the issue that the pivot was actually experiencing in the first 30 minutes, so that we weren't creating as well as we could. So I think you can nitpick positions here a little bit, but I think the fundamental truth is we didn't pull Norwich out of their settled block quick enough here, and probably the issue is progression a little bit earlier on.
But for me, one of the reasons this is why a lot of people will now look at what Granit Xhaka offers. As good as Maitland-Niles might have been in this game, the one thing I still critique is his passing range. And I think when you have a Granit Xhaka or a Thomas Partey or even a Lokonga to a level, they will get that ball and make that first time over the top ball, which doesn't allow your oppositions to settle. That's one of the things we did miss, because we didn't have Partey who does that quite frequently. And as much as people like or don't like Granit Xhaka, that is one thing he offers, is that first time over the top ball. And don't forget, he was one of the most progressive passes into the final third in Europe last season. He was top 10 of doing it. I think he ended on top 6 or something. So he does offer that, and that's what we missed, because firstly, Maitland-Niles got a point to prove, so he's probably not going to make those risky passes. He's going to, well, I don't want to lose possession and make these risky passes if they don't come off. Whereas Lokonga doesn't care. Like, Lokonga is one of those players who'll do it.
There has to be, I think Lokonga can do it, but he didn't do as much of those forward in between the lines passes in this game as we're used to seeing him. So you had Maitland-Niles, who doesn't actually have the quality to do it, attempting it, and Lokonga, who does have the quality, not doing it. So we had 2 midfielders kind of doing the same thing, not really adding anything. And then when you got into the next moment here, is Odegaard is dropping deep and playmaking from this position. And the one thing I do want to say about this that I really, really liked is that I think Gabriel might have passed him the ball. He turned very, very quickly, and like before the defense could set up, because this is one of those positions that maybe a Xhaka gets the ball and he just passes it right back to Gabriel and we recycle again. Odegaard turned, knew exactly what Aubameyang would be doing, and hit it over the top to him. And really, Aubameyang should be scoring. We just don't do enough of this. Like, I just don't think we do enough of turn and hit it. Odegaard did this, and I'm sorry, I've never seen Xhaka do this. I know he has a lot of progressive passes, but a lot of them are the same pass in that left half space to Tierney. Does he really have... I think he does have the ability to do this, but only after we've passed it around a little bit and everybody's settled and Aubameyang's already kind of marked. I think that this was a really good moment, but it's something that now I've seen it, I want to see it a lot more. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the thing is with the Xhaka thing, he doesn't have the athleticism to do what an Odegaard did in that situation. Odegaard can, and this is one of the reasons why I said to people, I don't mind the signing of Odegaard. I do think Odegaard and Aubameyang unlock each other in terms of just the way they play. They don't want to play 1-2s with each other like ESR does. And Aubameyang, that is literally Aubameyang's bread and butter. I'm just so disappointed he didn't finish that. Yes, I know he got flagged for offside, but it would have been overturned by VAR. But the difference is, the only players, in my opinion, who can do things like that are Partey. Lokonga has the ability, we've just not seen it enough. And Odegaard, well, ESR as well. But that's the difference that you get in quality when, and this is where, the point that George always makes is when you have athletic players, this is what you can do. They can receive the ball, turn, pass without really needing to think about it. Whereas with the Granit Xhaka, firstly, he doesn't have the athleticism nor the mobility to turn that quickly and make that pass. And that's the difference you get in quality when you have an athletic player.
Yeah, this is what I talk about in the midfield about increasing our chance creation, Jess. Like when I talk about, look, I know Odegaard's not your pivot player, but in that situation he was. And when you've got a pivot with the authority to play through the lines, it's a risky pass. That Aubameyang chance that we have here is no more or less risky than the slide that we had a couple, slides ago. And, I don't want to hammer Odegaard, but like this is the chances that you make in terms of speeding up the progression. And the big thing that this does is now imagine Aubameyang, sure, he probably should do better to finish that, but imagine he's got 4 or 5 of those chances, which directly results from speeding up progression. Exactly what Laura Gunnar says, like this is the result of having a pivot that's able to progress quickly and play punchy passes between the lines. I have a thing, I think I've said it in the past video, like when I coach my boys, I say that they have 3 seconds and I'll attach a bell. So the first second's control, second second's look up, and the third one's pass. I don't think we do enough of that. I don't think we do enough of the receive play. I don't see that speed of movement. And, Partey does do that. That's what quality does. And, that's what gets us up the pitch a lot more. And, funny enough, this is 1v1 for Aubameyang. How many times do we get those chances? And they're just fundamentals. He doesn't. And so he's starved of them. And look, his efficiency in front of goal is probably similar, but if you expand that to 4 to 5 chances, he gets his goals. And so, I just think we just do this a little bit more often and we see the chances flow and that converts to goals.
Yeah, for sure. There's an interesting question here, or a point from Joe saying Xhaka's pass to Tierney, which is that pass that he does all the time, is what the opposition allows. Most defensive teams will push the attackers to the wings. And I kind of agree with that a little bit, is that if you've seen us pass it to Tierney over and over and over and over again, we don't really make a lot of those chances because, again, and I'll show you guys, the next slide is actually going to show it, is we do that a lot, but when Tierney passes, unless it's a cutback, which I don't think it always is, I think it's kind of a floaty cross to the back post, or a waist-high cross that's fizzed into Aubameyang or Lacazette. Neither of them are really those type of strikers that are going to scrap for those, or a missed cross, So I think this is more dangerous because it gets Aubameyang in a position where he thrives in behind the defense. Whereas if we had a different type of striker, the Tierney pass would make more sense. And that's probably the direction that we're going. But at the moment, we don't really have, the players to make that work. But let's move to the next one, because this is a move that we've been doing ever since Saka has become the player that we use off of the left-hand side in between the lines. Gabriel gets the ball, and this is what Gabriel is good at. He doesn't really have a passing range of a Ben White, but he can do these passes. He gets the ball and then pass it in between the lines to Saka. Saka turns and then pass it to Tierney, and then Tierney does one of those balls, and this is a good passage to play, but it doesn't really feel like it's something that we get a lot of joy from. Am I wrong from that? Because it's like,
No,
I don't know if it's
100%.
Tierney's crosses or we don't have the right striker to take advantage of it. What do you guys think?
It's the striker. For me, if you're going to be playing Aubameyang, you've got to play him in behind. He's not someone who thrives off crosses or balls into the box. He's not a physical striker in that sense, or a bully in terms of just being in that sort of area. The difference is, right, Tierney's balls are good, just not for the way we play. Or while the strikers that we have, even a Lacazette, for example, doesn't really thrive off these kinds of. With Lacazette, you kind of have to play football. With Aubameyang, you kind of got to play him in behind. That's just the way they are. Whereas if you bring in, let's say, a Dominic Calvert-Lewin or a Vlahovic, or to a degree even a Harry Kane, you'll start to see actually Tierney would have double figure assists, because these are the kinds of strikers that will take advantage of that, or will be in the right places for them. Like, even if you bought like a Cristiano Ronaldo, with his movement, for example, he'd be in the right places to receive those crosses and make something happen. For me, it is a striker thing more than it is a Tierney thing. But again, that's no fault of Tierney's. It's just one of those where I don't think Aubameyang's the right striker for that, in my opinion. We've never really seen him to score headers or, off of crosses many times. He can do it, but I just don't think he's that kind of striker.
I don't know. I disagree. I think the issue is what Laura Gunnar has said. There's not enough players in the box. In fact, like when you cite Aldo and those chances, I mean, Aubameyang thrived at Dortmund from doing this exact kind of play, playing off the last shoulder and crosses into the box. Like, that's how Dortmund played. The issue, I don't think, is really the cross. The issue for me is not enough bodies in the box to take away the decoy runs, because right now it's just Aubameyang. And, he's scored tons of goals like this throughout his career in terms of playing that way off the shoulder. And I don't think Tierney is wrong for crossing the ball, but the issue is you basically have Aubameyang versus 4 players. Like, right now, that's just not a situation you want. And, Bukayo had just played the ball, but we need Martin to, like, make a run into the left channel. Like, you need to add a body there. Bukayo has just received and played it to Tierney. So we need Martin to recognize that and offer an option near post. Aubameyang can offer kind of the back post, or if you want to switch it, who cares? Like, Aubameyang can go near post and then Martin can go wide. But I think at the end of the day, you just don't have enough players in the box in this scenario. And we do see this a lot. That's my issue with it. I don't think in system it's a problem. But if this is City, you have another Phil Foden down there in the box, or 2 or 3 more players in the box.
What I will say is that if Emile Smith-Rowe is on the pitch, he can actually be the guy in between the lines, passing it to Tierney, and Saka's in the box. You know what I mean? We just have one less person, and that doesn't give us, like, all we really need is Pepe to get into the box and also another attacking midfielder. Saka, in this half, was very deep receiving the ball and playmaking. It's very difficult to get that ball, pass it to Tierney, and be the guy in the box. And that's where Martin comes in, but he was a little bit too deep and too slow. So
I think it comes down to our pivot troubles, Jess, personally, because what you saw as a common theme is these guys dropping way too deep, that they then don't have the legs, which I don't blame them, but they just can't get into the box. And so if you start to add, like, a Partey who doesn't need 2 or 3 players to help him progress out of the play, then you basically have these guys way higher up the pitch. And look, Emile Smith-Rowe in Bukayo's position makes that run deep. Like, he attacks space very, very well. And so if you start to change up the profiles, look, a little things will be a little bit different. But I think we see this scenario too often. I don't think it's a striker issue. I think it's a player in the box issue, because I feel that Liverpool, City, United even, like, they have these chances, but they have way more players in the box. And look, more players draw out more markers, right? Like, it's very easy to mark an Aubameyang in this scenario. And it's not just because, he's weak on headers, or he's not just because he's got great movement, right? Like, I think the issue is you're 1v4. It really is that simple for me. Add more players and it becomes easy. But I do think it stems from the pivot,
I'm saying is,
personally.
Like, if you change that striker into a more physical striker, like Calvert-Lewin, for example, is isolated in the box many times when crosses come in.
He'll
But
compete more, but do you
yeah,
want him 1v4?
no. But that's what I'm trying to say. If you want to do that where players aren't getting into the box, it's a striker issue. But if your instruction is get more players into the box, then yeah, it doesn't really matter. But it seems to be a reoccurring theme where Aubameyang's isolated from a Tierney cross. So if that's the way you want it to be, you have to replace the striker with someone who can do that. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, no, I see it. It's just, I don't know, personally for me, because I've seen in that Dortmund team, that's what they did. They went byline and they crossed kind of in the box for Aubameyang.
No, but that's where more players were in the box. This is what I'm trying to say. It's like, if that's how you want to play with an isolated striker being in the box for your crosses, then you need to change the striker. Or
I don't
you
know
change
if
the
that's. Do you
instruction
think
of
that
the
that's
team.
the way that Arteta wants to play? Do you?
No.
You know,
No, I do think in this game, Odegaard felt he had to come deep, and Saka felt he had to come deep
Because
for
of the
ball
pivot.
to break.
in that first half, he did have to come deep and assume some of that deep lying playmaker role because we didn't have Xhaka and Lokonga.
It's where the
and
problem
Ainsley were
lies for
struggling.
me. Yeah, like that's the fundamental base. Like I don't want to critique players here because I know why they dropped deep and they weren't bad for doing it. They were doing it to offer between the lines and to get us an out ball, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they wanted to relieve pressure. But the issue for me just stems from the pivot, and we just have to wait. Like, this is what Partey gives us. So when people tell me, why do you want a Basuma or a defensive midfielder? How does that relate to us getting more chances? Well, it's this. Because for me, I don't feel as though those wingers have to drop as deep to collect the ball. They can stay up higher up the pitch because they know that their pivot can pick up the ball and find them between the lines. They don't have to come and find and search for it themselves. So it's a knock-on effect. I do hear what you're saying, though, Souls. Like, if they're isolated, a physical striker does better. But I think the fundamental issue for me is get more guys in the box like that.
But I do think that will be fixed just with the midfield. I think once you get like a Thomas Partey, or even to a degree a Xhaka, or you go back. For me, this problem isn't fixed by buying a striker necessarily. If you go get yourself a Basuma, for example, naturally you'll have more players forward because not even a Basuma, just someone who's good defensively on their own. Like, for example, at Barcelona, you had Busquets, who could read the game really well, didn't really offer a lot going forward. That allowed Iniesta to go forward. That allowed the likes of Xavi to go forward and make numbers up. Like, even when you look at Barcelona now, as bad as they've been, De Jong is able to go more forward because he knows he's got Busquets behind him, and that's the difference. And Pedri can go more further forward and offer that number in attack. Yeah. But once you have someone like Lokonga and Maitland-Niles who both need support just to get the ball into the situation, that's where your problem is. Too many players are dropping back. They have to. By the time the ball gets to Tierney, because one of those have made the pass, they're having to make the pass and run as quick as they can, and it's never going to work.
Yeah, that's why we don't need people like this. Is why the Xhaka conversation is so interesting because he needs hand holding. We have quite a bit of midfielders that need hand holding, and I'm not saying that we need to play a single pivot, but what I am saying is that, like George, I feel very strongly about getting a CDM that it's all action CDM that can do it all to allow our midfielders to go forward, and we have one of the best Thomas Partey can do all that stuff. It's like Fabinho, when he plays, Thiago can just do his thing.
Yeah.
And we need that. We just don't have that. But this was my favorite part of the game.
Yeah.
This was it. This was it. This is the moment I was waiting for. So, 29th minute, Gabriel gets the ball. We're under a little bit of pressure by Pukki, I guess. And he passed the ball back to Ramsdale. Ramsdale gets it first-time ball into Lokonga's feet. Lokonga doesn't do anything with it. He kind of slows down. And, my only critique on this is that I would like him to get it and turn quickly and burst into space. That's what Thomas would have done. Lokonga doesn't do that. He needs to learn how. But, Ramsdale, the difference, if you just go back a couple of games, you watch Leno, he would put his foot on top of the ball. Stand,
he would pass it to Ainsley in this scenario.
Pass it to Ainsley, it to Ben White. He wouldn't have done that. And that's really the difference, isn't it? He was giving me Emi Martinez vibes, the ability to recognize when we need to speed up play in order to take advantage of moments where Norwich is out of shape or pressing us high so that we could turn and go and play on the counterattack. I think that is why we have him there, and he justified his selection, didn't he?
The thing is, it's not even his passing range or the fact he can pass a ball.
Decision making.
It's the fact before he receives the ball, he already knows what he's going to do, and that's what Emi Martinez did every single time. It was like he'd read the game before it happened, and that's all it is really, and that's what makes good ball playing goalkeepers. Where in that situation, yes, there's multiple options. He could have gone to Gabriel, could have gone to Ben White, could have gone to Maitland-Niles, or he could have gone to Lokonga. But that Lokonga pass is only on if you knew that before you got the ball. Whereas with the Leno, needs to think about it before he makes that ball, because maybe it's a shocking confidence because of how many mistakes he's made making a pass. But for me, that's just a natural ability to play out of the bag and make that decision a lot quicker than any other keeper we've got in the team at the moment.
I mean, this is why I was so high on Ramsdale. I tried to tell everybody, like, this is what he does. This is his bread and butter. And, like, this ball to Lokonga just was on so many times. It wasn't just this, still frame. That was what we were doing the entirety of the press. Like you said, I think Lokonga slows it a little bit down. That comes with experience. But Ramsdale's know-how to kind of release the ball quickly. This was absolutely the Emi Martinez decision-making that I drew parallels with. He can do this on a dime. And by the way, he also has a great clip ball wide. It's one of his best distribution qualities. And, I think you're on mute. But
that's what I'm showing that, yeah.
and like he does the Pookie chance as well that, we'll get to. And, it's just about having composure when being pressed. And like this chance is complete composure in the box from a press. Leno doesn't do this. This gets screwed up, or this gets passed into the midfield, and this is why a goalkeeper was
corner.
Or out for a corner. It adds pressure. Like, this is exactly why a goalkeeper was so vital for us. And I'm not sitting there saying he's the best ball-playing center back in the world, but what he does do are clear upgrades in terms of decision-making, in terms of claiming crosses, but that clip ball wide. He has those things in his locker. They were on show. And by the way, he turns and he fires this ball out to Pepe, who has a bad touch, and I think Mikel cleans it up for him. But this passage of play, by the way, is an overload. So this is kind of the issue that I've got is after beating the press, firing a ball wide, we need somebody to dead this ball. And, we have... Is
this where we should show the Mahrez clip then?
I would show the Mahrez clip because this is exactly the difference that you're going to see.
Yeah, let me get on that right now. Keep talking.
And I think a little bit, I'll just talk like a little bit better comparison really is Ben White firing a ball. We saw it on the bench cam that he receives the ball and fires it off to, Pepe in space with 40 yards. And, that's a little bit more of a better comparison to what we're about to see. But this is the FA Cup kind of channel. And where what you're looking at is, Man City will fire a ball out to Mahrez, who controls it beautifully in stride. Yeah, it's essentially this chance, which I cry every time seeing. But look, you receive kind of Laporte, and he's going to fire a 40-yard horribly. But we had this exact chance with Pepe in the middle of the game. Ben White fires it to him 1v1, and he has a bad touch. And in fact, you can see Mikel get really pissed off. These are the chances that I think Pepe struggles with. Okay, when I talk about Pepe doing good things but bad things, he stops these chances and he stops these half chances from happening. And when you get the ball there's an overload, and they really should be doing better. They should communicate. But I think it's just frustrating because we have these options in the game too often. If Bakayo's there, we take advantage of this. And I think we beat the press and it turned into a chance.
What I do want to add to that is what we've also got to understand. This is the first time all of these guys have played all together. So it does make a difference. As the chemistry builds, I do think it become a bit more natural for people to make certain movements. But yeah, no, I do agree. Obviously, right now, I think these teething issues will sort themselves out. And then obviously, once we get our proper pivot back as well, I just think it'll just be more natural and it just flows a lot better. But yeah, no, the critiques are fair. And I do think Arteta will be looking at these as well. But I do think it's one of those, I think, that will just smooth themselves out with time.
You know what it is, Souls? You know why I'm not so sure about this specific scenario and why the other Pepe is he's not marked. Like, this is open. Like, for me, this is why I get so frustrated. Like, I don't even think this is chemistry. This is just basics. Dead the ball. Dead the ball. You're in space.
I'm going to be honest. This is why I want him sold. I don't think he's good enough.
Tierney had a ball where he was driving up the pitch about halfway and cross the ball from one side to the other. We now have 4 defenders that can hit a ball. 4. And our offensive players need to be able to take advantage of it. There's no reason to spend that money on these defenders. There's just none. Pepe got that ball. It went off his shin and went straight to the Norwich. Like, it's not about hating Pepe. I understand that he created a lot of chances. Some of those, I mean, you have to take it with a grain of salt because some of them were corners. It's not, if he's not close enough to the goal, then he's almost useless to us. And that sounds so harsh, but he needs to be inside the box on his left foot so he can hit the ball back post. That is his bread and butter, but he's not close enough to the goal enough to make it worth it for him to be on the pitch over Emile Smith-Rowe, because I think Emile Smith-Rowe deads that ball and turns and drives up the pitch.
That's
you know what I mean?
He does.
Remember, Jess, when we were talking about in the transfer window, when I said we don't have enough, or we don't have a player who can literally carry the ball from there and make something happen. I do think maybe when Unai Emery was saying he wanted Wilfred Zaha instead, there was a point to that, because I do think if we had Wilfred Zaha in this situation, we'd be genuinely a threat. And I think teams are realizing actually we don't even need to defend Pepe in this situation.
You don't, because he's inconsistent. And I'm sorry to go in, because this is like I'm the one that's critiqued in the chat the most for being a Pepe hater. But you know what? It's not just this chance. He has another chance with Ben White that's farther up the pitch. And when you look at that Mahrez chance, by the way, it's a lot harder to control. Tierney's right up his backside. There's no excuse. Pepe is in space. He's not marked. In fact, he's got freaking Odegaard there to help his hand. And, it's not the first time that we've seen it. And at 26, you cannot bank on having these inconsistencies in your game. When I go and I compare it to an Alexis Sanchez, who similarly got dispossessed, he never did it in space, by the way. He only got dispossessed doing risky situations. I'm okay with that. I actually make a pass for that. But what I don't make a pass for is at 26, turning 27, in space, you can't dead a ball that's been floated to you. That wasn't a bad pass. You were open. It was on your strong foot. Like, I don't even have an excuse for it. So for me, it's not just one scenario, it's multiple, and he slows the attack down, and you just can't be doing that. If we're going to critique the pivot for doing the same way, I got to be consistent. And, this is what he critiques for me. And while he may have chances, he's inconsistent in his final action and his first. And that's just not on for me.
All right. Another Ramsdale moment. This is what I came for. Yeah, this is second half vibes. Gets it from Gabriel. Takes a little touch. And boom, he fires it into Lokonga. Lokonga turns. And then this is kind of like a meh moment. Ramsdale was passing the ball to Lokonga like every single time he got it. It was perfect the way he did it. Now we're in this position, and this is where I thought the spacing and the balance of that midfield pivot was off. I don't think Ainsley is in the right position. I think the space is on the other side where Lokonga can find him in space, because, that is where the space is, and he didn't recognize it quick enough. We recirculate the ball, and then Ainsley gets it back a little bit further.
Thomas is there all the time as well.
Yeah, it's just it's a little bit like, okay, these guys, they don't play with each other a lot. They're both young, inexperienced. They'll learn over time. But this is something where I think at the very least, if we want to take something from it, we have a goalkeeper that can play the ball out with his feet. And it's not a coincidence that our defense looked so much more calm, because a lot of people reported that Ramsdale is very loud on the pitch. He organizes his defense, and defenders need instruction. Sometimes they can't see the angle. Sometimes they're preoccupied with their marker, so they need to know. And the guy that's looking at the pitch should be the most vocal, because he should be giving the instructions. And Ramsdale does that. And I think it's something that's going under the radar, because some people were very big on being against Ramsdale, and that's fine. I get that, but don't act for a second that you didn't feel more comfortable with him. And don't it's not just Norwich. There have been times where Leno has played against lower level opposition, and we did not feel comfortable like that. It felt very much like when he came into the team, and all of a sudden playing out of the back was second nature.
Just look at the Brentford difference. I'm sorry, Jess. I went big on Ramsdale, so you best be here that I'm ready to collect. Like when you look at his profile, he's the antithesis to Leno in every way. Talkative, claiming crosses, plays early passes that's on, has a greater distribution. What this allows is a calmer defense, and it's no coincidence that I think the defense looked more resolute, but calmer. Like it's what he transmits, that energy that he transmits to your back line. It's important. It matters. When you have two lower level oppositions in Brentford and Norwich, you look at the opening 15 minutes of each game, you can see the difference. And look, we had a little bit better defenders, but it wasn't just that. It was Ramsdale's impact on the distribution, helping us get out there. His calming nature, I think, transmitted a lot of great things because we have the same system here, Jess. Same system, a little bit better players, but these two goalkeepers are very different in how they perform in that system. And I think that's a huge thing for us going forward if we're going to play a high line, if we're going to do this build-up.
But can I just add to that as well? When we look at it, let's take it last year when we played Olympiacos, when we played, I believe it was Benfica. When Gabriel looked at Leno and goes, nah, and then he got dispossessed because he didn't try. You could, and the thing is, I know I could be saying this, but just go look at the body language. You look at the way Gabriel looked at Leno, seen that the only option was a pass back, but goes, nah, I don't want to pass it to him. I'm just not going to do it. And that's the difference. Whereas with these defenders, not only does it breed confidence, but they know they can pass it back to Ramsdale and that they're not going to get screwed up for it because Ramsdale will make sure he makes the right decision, whether he clears the ball, whether he makes a pass. Whereas with Leno, like, for example, look at the Burnley incident last year when it went to 1-1. That situation, Leno should have cleared the ball rather than play Xhaka, but then Xhaka could have done better with that situation. And then when you look at Olympiacos, when I believe he passed it to Dani Ceballos, whereas he shouldn't have passed it to Dani Ceballos. Like, there were so many, and these are the differences. When you do that, like 4, 5, 6 times, your players lose confidence in giving you the ball, and that puts them under pressure when they should be making the decision to go back to their keeper. And naturally, that's why it just flows, because they know, okay, pass it back to Ramsdale, he'll make something happen. He won't put me back under pressure and make me commit a mistake. That's the difference.
And I think the most frustrating part is that, when you look at these things, it was such a crucial starting 11 addition. Sorry, guys, antithesis just means opposite. I saw a question in the chat about what it is.
I kept seeing like atheists and stuff in the comments, and I was like, where's this coming from?
It means antithesis is just the opposite. He's the opposite of what Leno is. Look, yeah. it's so crucial to our build-up. It's so crucial to how we want to play. And, I think it helps us get the ball up the pitch better. I think the one maybe conclusion that we can get from this game is press was good, pivot or somebody slowed our progression, so we didn't get enough 1v1 chances. They had their settle block a little bit too often, and so that's why maybe that press at the beginning wasn't fruitful in impact on goals. Like that's where the drop is. And of course that gets fixed with a pivot, but that also gets fixed, Jess, with a goalkeeper. That gets fixed with quicker build up in the back.
So one thing because it keeps coming up, and I just feel like I just want to address it really quick because we just went through the Pepe section, and Dave Atkinson, thank you so much for your comment, is saying, please can you tell me what game you're watching, because all of our dangerous moments were created by Pepe. Your golden boy Saka was poor for most of the game. And then Colby says Pepe was shown the line over and over and over and couldn't beat Williams. And I think that's the thing, that he looked dangerous because he was the person touching the ball the most. But he wasn't dangerous at all, because if he can't get onto his left foot, he's basically a non-factor. And Williams and whoever else was helping him, I think it was the Greek guy that you were talking about, George.
Solis.
They kept showing him to the byline because they knew that he would stall. When Pepe is not on his left, he tends to stall because he has to get his body in a certain
He can't
position.
Go in and out. He can't go in and out.
That's just not his vibes. Like, so it seems dangerous when you're getting all these corners, but for Norwich, they're thinking, okay, if we keep him off of his left, he can't put in a good cross and he can't shoot. Not only that, if we let him do what we know he's going to do and stall, then they get a corner and they're dead on those as well. So you can't say that touching the ball the most and being the most busy makes you dangerous when in those positions you're actually not dangerous at all. Do you know what I mean? It's like if
Well, the worst
Aubameyang
thing
touches
is
the ball the most, but it's on the left-hand side, on the byline, he's not dangerous. He's not dangerous. Like,
well,
he just
yeah.
touched the ball a lot.
Worst thing
That's
too,
it.
Jess, is we used Pepe as our outlet this game. Like Tierney was a little bit more reserved in terms of his overlapping. We actually used the right or tried to use the right a lot more. Like our goal was to use Pepe as the guy to have our attack run through. He just didn't do enough with it. So when you're saying that you saw him receive a lot of touches, which he did, well, of course, because we kind of used him as the point of attack in this game. You know, Tierney didn't overlap as much. He did in the first opening exchanges, but there was a much more reserved role from Kieran Tierney from this game. The plan was absolutely to use Pepe to isolate Brandon Williams, who, by the way, is a right footer playing on the opposite side. And like that was the plan of the coach tactically. And, you know, we gave him the ball, but he just didn't do it. And so for me, I don't know, I get frustrated when I see those things. And, you know, when you
But
look at
see,
Stack, yeah,
We're about to talk about this right now because here's the thing. Dave is saying this is where the goal came from. It came from Pepe. I get that, but we could have had more dangerous opportunities had he had better touch, had he been able to cross early. There were so many moments in that game where he stalled and he let Williams come back into it. And I'm sorry, that goal doesn't happen unless Bakayil gets the ball in between the lines and passes it to him. Like,
yeah.
It's
Or
not
Partey with the pass. Like that
Yeah,
does not
like-
happen. Like any right winger in his role in the system is there. That isn't a Pepe movement creating that. That's completely Partey, and that's completely Saka receiving between the lines. Every right winger is in Pepe's position right now. That's all Saka and
that's
Partey.
the problem with Pepe. It's like if, say, for example, we replaced Pepe with, let's say, a Jeremy Doku or a Wilfred Zaha or who else is it that we're looking at now? Like anyone else who can be that sort of attacking threat, bar being, you know, sort of played in behind,
Yeah.
does better in that situation. Even if you put Bukayo Saka and made him the outlet on the right hand side, we'd probably see better chance creations or those same chances being taken a lot better than what Pepe did. I'm not denying that he wasn't involved in the goal or what he did, but he should have actually scored. Forget about Aubameyang scoring. He should have scored. But it's this hesitancy to take it on his left foot that meant that Williams blocked it. That should have been a Pepe goal. That's my frustration with him time and time again. It's his hesitation that leads to him not being as big of a threat as he can be. It's actually a frustrating thing, not necessarily us digging him out, but it's just him being a bit more concise would make him a lot more dangerous.
Because he has the ability, Souls. Like, this is the most
He
frustrating
does.
thing for me. Like, the boy has the ability to do it, and he's just not consistent in his final action, and he's not consistent in the basics. And until you can start to do that on a consistent basis, I don't believe you warrant your starting spot in the team. And so while he's not horrible, and he absolutely gets, you know, great chances, like, he's a good player, he's going to get good chances. But fundamentally, I need you to start doing the basics more often and to warrant basically putting our best player out of position. That's really where the conversation comes down to, right? Like, it's not so much, is he a good player? Is he a bad player? Look, we know he's inconsistent. We know this. But is he good enough on his good moments to keep our best player out of his preferred position? The answer is a no for me.
Yeah, so here's the wonderful pass from Thomas Partey, and this is where
Gorgeous.
if this is Lokonga, who at this point in his career, I don't think he's there quite yet.
He gives it to
He may-
Odegaard.
Yeah, he may pass it to Odegaard, but this is a disguised pass from a world-class midfielder.
Yeah.
Most players, there's a couple of passes on, and only the best players can do the disguised pass and it actually come off. You can try it and it gets cut off, or you don't put enough pace on it. The pace of pass and the ability to see the pass and do it at the right time and the confidence just shows the levels that we're looking at. And I'm hoping that Lokonga can get to that level as he gets older. Remember, Thomas is 8 years older than him. You know,
Yeah.
this pass,
And he's world class. Yeah.
yeah, and he's world class. Like, he just is. So he does these, and he does these all the time. This is essentially what got us. And it's funny because in that game, Odegaard was actually the one receiving the passes. In this game, it's Saka, but it was the West Ham game where we really saw Thomas take the game by the scruff of the neck when Xhaka came out and became the director of that midfield. He passes it into Bukayo, and Bukayo does his signature turn, which this is his superpower. And some people may be like,
Yeah.
It's not goals, it's not assists, but like, this is a skill that gets you out and into space. Like, basically, if you can turn there, look at where Pepe is now. This is what I'm talking about, is now he's in space because Saka has drawn in essentially 3 players. Brandon Williams is not in the position that he was. Number 7 is taken out of the game, and the other guy is just bumbling around trying to figure out what his life is about. Pepe is wide open, and look where he is. Most of the game, he was out there on the other side of the box, like out there closer to the touchline. That's not where he needs to be. This is a position where he can easily switch it onto his left, and that's essentially what he did from there. Switch it onto his left, and that shot that he has with his left foot, that little quick one, where it's not even, he doesn't even have full extension. It's just very, very quick onto his left foot and then to the back post. That was a really nice shot by Pepe, and that's the position that he needs to be in. That's where most of his goals come from as well. I don't know if people notice, but that's where he scores a lot of his goals from. So Saka being able to draw people in and get people off of Pepe so that he could be open in the box helps us a lot. And that only happened when you had that additional 10 in there, Emile Smith-Rowe, and the vision for Thomas Partey. You know?
I mean, you want also somebody else in your pivot. Like, this is one of my frustrations with Odegaard. He should be overlapping there, or like there should be an overlapping option just to give Pepe some extra space there. And I know he's coming from deep, but look, I think we got to get him in these more 1v1 chances. He does really well with the shot. He gets it away, far post, exactly where you want to put it. I don't think he does much wrong in the shot there or in the action. That was great. The issue comes when you don't get those chances often enough, and you're just not decisive enough when you do get those few chances that I say, okay, I'm willing to accept the inconsistencies in your game because you're getting us the consistent output. You're making the difference on the other end of the pitch. Look, we have tons of players like that from the past and from old, and even now that we can. I mean, I don't think they were quite as bad in the fundamentals, but we had players that were like that, inconsistent but gave you output. And I just don't think we're meeting the cutoff point in this game where Oba needs the freedom. I don't know if we can afford to give it to Pepe as well. We don't have a team that's able to do that. So, yeah, for me, maybe I needed Odegaard to do another overlapping option, or Ainsley, or whoever it is. I think it was Odegaard because I think here Ainsley's off, if I remember correctly. And Odegaard was in the pivot with Partey.
Right back.
Or he's right back, yeah.
He's still right back. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and so maybe Ainsley needs to make that overlapping run, or Odegaard. One of the two needs to figure it out that, Saka's drawn it in. We need another option there. But, yeah, I mean, look, we need more of these 1v1s. We know what it is. I think I don't hate the player, but it's just come down to me where I don't feel his inconsistencies match the output. So for me, I'm very dead set in terms of I want our front four to be Oba and then ESR, Odegaard, Saka. I want that to happen for the next couple of games, see what we get in output, and then if not, we can try to go for a Pepe, Martinelli, and another type of striker. But for me, I think we've made a choice that Oba's our top. So surround him with players that make sense.
Do you know the one thing we're not doing is taking advantage of the fact that a lot of Premier League teams are going to target Saka, double team him, even triple team him at times, and we just don't take advantage of that. Like, look at here, Pepe's got one man to beat, which is Brandon Williams. The rest of them are focusing on a Saka, and then the others are going to focus on Aubameyang because they deem them to be more of a threat than Nicola Pepe at this very moment. Because if you look at 65 minutes, the amount of bad touches he's had, the amount of bad decisions he's made, they're not really that fussed if one person goes on him, because they know that's enough to stop him. Whereas with the Bukayo Saka, for example, when you look at his output in terms of making chances of making something happen, is a lot higher. So they're double teaming him. Look at number 44 and Max Aarons. They're both going to be teaming up on Aubameyang because they know that's where the ball is inevitably going to come in. And that's where I think when you look at Smith-Rowe and Odegaard, the reason they're getting so much space, even if they made the overlap, is because they're more focused on those other two players to make sure, because they're more of a known threat in the Premier League. Aubameyang being, a Golden Boot winner in his first proper season, getting like pretty much 30 odd goals prior to that every single season. They know he's got the ability to score. Bukayo Saka being one of the star boys, one of the best players last season, and being one of the best players in young players in the Premier League, they're gonna want to man mark these out of the game. So for me, we need to take advantage of that because there's going to be so much more space opening up for Odegaard, for Pepe, if ESR's on the pitch, even for him. So that's what we need to start doing. And that's where, where George's point comes in. Make those runs because you're gonna be free to make better decisions.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if everybody is still fit by the time we get to Burnley, what decisions Arteta makes. I think Thomas comes straight
Is
into
there
the
any doubts at the moment? Because I've not heard anything.
There's not, but you never really know what could happen from now until the weekend, Hopefully we have as many options as possible. I do think Pepe coming off of the bench in moments where we need more is also good. ESR was good off the bench, so I don't think it's all negative. I think we do have to find a way to create balance. And my biggest fear is that we end up going back to like a Lacazette type of thing, because we want to fit Pepe in. It's because I do think Pepe plays better with Lacazette versus Aubameyang. So we'll see what happens.
I think that's because Martinelli's not fit enough to play in this. I think once he can regain that sort of fitness, even with ESR to a degree as well, because we're still evaluating whether he's got a fatigue issue, because we've seen that last season where once you give him a consistent run of games, you do see 1 or 2 games where you're a bit like, he looked a bit tired. Not to say he was, but he just looked like he was. And I think that's what it is. I do still think there's a little bit of tweaking that Arteta's doing. It's the first game after the international break. You're never going to get the lineup you want to see. That always is the case, depending on who can train, depending on what we're seeing. Obviously, Maitland-Niles had more time to train with the club. Obviously, they're not going to. And then Partey was a doubt. He came out and said it in his press conference, saying, "We don't know if he's 100%, but we'll see on the match day," which is what he always says about a player, which tends to mean they ain't starting. That's just his way of saying they're not going to start. And that's obviously what came to happen. I do think he'll play against Burnley. And obviously, Granit Xhaka's still out. I think
till Wimbledon. He's also out at Wimbledon.
Yeah, he's out. So it'll be interesting to see what he does away from home.
The spine is back. And I think the spine is back. Like overall, there's a little bit inconsistencies in the game, right? Like I said on the pre-match, there's 0 to 30, then there's a 30 to 62 until the sub where we struggled. Norwich gained the upper hand, and then from 62 on, we really had our spine back, and that's where we dominated the game. We really should have scored more than just one chance. There was a lot more chances that we really should have put away. But at the end of the day, we're starting to get players back, and I think we start to see green shoots of improvement when that spine is back. I'm not surprised. It was the one thing I was looking for in context. Let's see who we get on Burnley, but I would imagine that ESR and Partey are good to start. I haven't seen any issues with it. So when you add those two in the team in the starting lineup, I think you get more consistency in that action, though, right? Like people are saying we should have dominated for 90 minutes. I don't think we had a pivot to dominate for 90 minutes. I was worried. But add those players in, I expect it. So I think we'll get those answers, and we'll get them really soon.
All right, you guys. There's about 200 of you guys watching on all platforms. Make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. Remember, Tactical Tuesdays are usually just for members, and today was just an opportunity to show you guys what we actually do on these shows. We really do a deep dive into tactics and go through the game kind of from start to finish and talk about what we saw from a tactical standpoint. So if you did like it, consider becoming a member. You can join for less than $5 per month or £5 per month, which is pretty affordable. If you can't afford it, no worries. We'll still be here for match previews, instant reaction, and all of that. Colby joined as a member today. Thank you so much for joining. I think it's Colby Hollingsworth. And also, Io joined as a member as well. So thank you guys so much. There'll also be some other exclusive content coming out. But nevertheless, we'll be back on Friday for a match preview for Arsenal versus Burnley. Starting 11, availability, press conference, reaction, all of that. So that'll probably be the next time you guys see us. But there may be something in between because we can't stay away. There's always something going on in Arsenal world. So yeah, like the video, subscribe to the channel, share with a friend, consider becoming a member. And yeah, we'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.